Onibaba was directed in 1964 by Kaneto Shindō, and it comes only 2 years after Shindo's film Naked Island, which was a piece of socialist realism about peasants living in the countryside and how the landscape dominated their lives. And in a way, Onibaba is like that too. It's also about peasants living in a landscape, this time not an island surrounded by salt water, but a sea of Suzuki reeds in which the protagonists are able to hide and conceal themselves, and it's what an impact that landscape has on them that the film is about. Because whereas the protagonists of Naked Island were constantly exposed in the sun to all the elements, there was literally no hiding place on the Naked Island. That's what it was. Onibaba is all about concealment and disguise, and in a sense the value of costume and the financial value that's put on people's clothes, even though their lives are worthless. So it's in some ways a companion piece. Indeed, it stars the same actress, Nobuko Otowa, who was the director's wife and also, he said, his muse. But again, the protagonist that she plays is quite different from the innocent, hard-working, suffering woman of Naked Island. Onibaba is much more commercial and much more approachable for an audience looking for entertainment. Again, it's black and white, it's cinemascope, it's dominated by the landscape, but it has a really strong story, because both the women in Onibaba are murderers. They lie in wait for soldiers fleeing from feudal battles, and they kill them, steal their armor and their swords, and sell them on the black market for some millet or some sake. So it's a tremendous setup, because obviously you've got these two women, one slightly older, one slightly younger, both of them very attractive, who wander around topless for a good portion of the film. So there's a tremendous amount of sex and sexual anticipation in the film. A lot of sweating, a lot of lying on the floor. It's much more commercial, and of course there's the horror element as well. Because these two women are murderers. Their next door neighbor, played by Kai Sato, is a fugitive from the war, himself a wanted man who they're quite apt to kill. And it's really about the sexual tension between the two women, the older and the younger. The younger woman's desire to find a new mate, and of course she settles on Sato because he's the only guy around. And what the older woman does to try and bring her back into the murder business. So it's really a commercial film. It's a great setup. There's a horror aspect to it, and it all revolves around a pit, a hole in the ground into which they throw the bodies of their victims. Apparently, the story is based on an old Buddhist parable, which was intended to encourage women to be devout and to go to religious ceremonies. Obviously, Shindo, who's a leftist and a socialist, doesn't take this thing as gospel, and he turns it into a very compelling and actually quite frightening horror movie, which is simultaneously very sexy, and which simultaneously has more than one political message. On the one hand, you can view it as just a treatise about capitalism, about how capitalism works, and as long as there are people able to feed the machine, it's always going to continue to use people and grind them up the way the whole does in Onibaba. As long as we keep the mouth of consumerism and capitalism fed, everything will continue to be this way. And the war that the two women are profiteering from has been going on for years, if not generations. They themselves are driven to this thing because they have no food. So they're driven to become murderers. So in that sense, it's still a political film. It's a film about the essential nature of capitalism, and it's a film about the corrupting and destabilizing nature of war. Obviously something which the director, having lived through the Second World War, would have had strong feelings about. The score is by Hikari Hayashi, who was the director's favorite composer and worked with him on a number of his films. It's not just the score that's very good; it's also the sound design, the way that the effects. You know, when the wind blows through those reeds, what the sound does, and the cries of birds, and the sounds of horses' hooves. There's a tremendous work of sound design in the film, as well as of cinematography. It's really a strong film. It has quite a reputation. When it first opened in the UK and the US, it was quite popular. It had a big success abroad, and in that sense, it pushed Shindo more in the direction of doing commercial films. Although The Naked Island established him on the international scene with all the awards that it received, Onibaba is the film that he's known for, probably best of all in the West.